Mike Massaro is outside the office of the Ontario County Sheriff, the county where Canandaigua is located. Mike, what's the latest from there?
Well, the latest is that the sheriff of the Ontario County, Phil Pavero, held a press conference at 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon to update the media on the situation. He emphasized that it's an ongoing investigation, that all the details have still remained to be found out, and that they do not have a definitive answer as to what exactly happened on the racetrack. One thing he did, however, emphasize is that it's an on-track investigation and nothing more.
There are no criminal charges pending at this time, and I would follow that up by saying that as we have reviewed the investigation to this point with the Ontario County District Attorney, and again, I want to make it very clear that as we speak at this time, there is no evidence in hand or no facts that would support a criminal charge or support criminal intent.
Sheriff Pavero elaborated a little bit on what they did discover. He said, as far as caution speed goes, the speeds of the cars at that particular time, he estimated that it was between 25 and 35 miles per hour. As far as protocol goes for caution conditions on the racetrack, he surmised that everyone, including Tony Stewart, were adhering to those rules, and because of that, he didn't see any fault in that regard. What they're still looking for here at the Sheriff's Department, however, are some amateur videos. Anybody who might have been in the grandstands and took some video, perhaps on their phone or what have you, so that they can submit that for further dissection into maybe what happened, so that they have a better angle and a better understanding of what transpired at the racetrack on Saturday night.
And Mike, the video we showed earlier was of an amateur video that we received here at Sportcenter, but what have they seen in video evidence apart from that they've received from the public?
Well, the sheriff told me he has received several amateur videos already, and they're still trying to scour through those. One thing, though, that I found was interesting, I asked him whether or not any of those videos came from inside one of the race cars. Now, it's very common in some of these race cars that the drivers will have GoPro cameras or something to that effect, but as of right now, the sheriff says they do not have any of those videos in their possession.
That'll be an interesting story to follow. There's a lot of congestion on the track there between the two cars when the incident occurred. As for Tony Stewart, Mike, what did the sheriff say about his cooperation in the investigation?
Well, he gave Tony Stewart a lot of credit in terms of how much he's cooperated. His team has cooperated, and the people that work with him have cooperated. He was actually asked whether or not he knew where Tony's whereabouts were right now. He said he didn't, but he was free to go wherever he wanted to. So obviously, if there were criminal charges pending, he wouldn't be allowed to roam the country as he is. He was not at the Speedway today, from what I understand. I presume he headed back home to North Carolina or perhaps to Indiana.
All right. Mike Massaro outside the Ontario County Sheriff Courthouse. Thank you for joining us here on SportsCenter, Mike. Joined now by our NASCAR analyst, Ricky Craven. Ricky, the notion that at all levels of NASCAR, there should be a rule prohibiting drivers of getting out of their car unless there is some sort of life-threatening situation.
It's heat of the moment. It's something that I've done. It's something Tony Stewart's done. I think any driver that does that races long enough will experience a moment where he loses control, and comes out, wants to confront the driver, take risk. I think that nearly 12 hours into this, Robert, reporting and reacting to the terrible circumstances and the fatality, from an objective standpoint, I think there needs to be a mandate industry-wide, to your point, that says if you leave your car for any circumstances other than a fire or you being at risk, if you leave your car before the security crew gets there, there's a severe penalty. Having said that, knowing there's no greater penalty than losing your life.
Yes.
But doesn't that bring us full circle to the circumstances of which young Kevin Ward Jr. lost his life in large part because he did leave the vehicle, went down in harm's way, and then the rest of it, well, we don't know. But I do think it's important at this point just to try and understand what we can learn from the situation, and that's my take.
And Ward, even though he did not have the experience of Tony Stewart, and many other Cup drivers have done the same thing. Get out of their car, confront the driver that has, in their mind, done them wrong.
And one thing I can relate to, Robert, is from a driver's standpoint, having been behind the wheel for 25 years, sometimes drivers need to be protected from themselves. For instance, Kevin Harvick confronting Kyle Busch, that's on pit road, it's a little different. Danica Patrick confronting a driver, but she is protected by the security cars and not on the track. Same with Tony Stewart. He is having an issue with Matt Kenseth, goes back to Bristol a few years ago. Again, he's on pit road. You know, that heat of the moment where a driver sort of loses touch of reality and sees red, I think that's where the driver is most vulnerable, and I think evidence of that was last night, and we need to protect drivers from that.
I said earlier that we've never seen this sort of situation before. Tony Stewart and his team still have plenty to race for as far as the Cup season goes. How does a driver put away and put aside things that are unfolding off the track and still focus on the track?
It's a fair question, but I think it's an impossible question to try and answer. I can speak firsthand that drivers have to deal with loss in the sport, and I've been a part of the sport, NASCAR, where we've lost several drivers, starting with Clifford Allison several years ago, all the way to Dale Earnhardt Sr. at Daytona in 2001. As a driver, you come to grips with the fact that we do take risk, and you accept that risk inside the race car. What makes last night different and very uncomfortable is that it happened outside the race car. And when you step outside the race car, you lose the support of all the safety equipment, the roll cage, everything that the industry incorporates to help protect you. Last night, a driver was struck on the racetrack by a race car. I don't know how you overcome that. I don't know how Tony Stewart overcomes that. But I know that he's going to be challenged. He's going to lean on a lot of people. And I think long before he can even consider the playoffs or his NASCAR career, he's got to come to grips with the real-life aspect of this.
Yeah, and as you've said, the most important thing out of this story is that a young man is dead at the age of 20, Kevin Ward Jr., losing his life last night. NASCAR's Cup Series continuing this afternoon.